I think sometimes when we think about primary caregiving, we hold ourselves so accountable for these children. I think we definitely put our hearts into it, and securing these relationships with the children. And I think that when there is something that is challenging with these relationships or with the particular child, it's actually that much easier to achieve these challenges. I think it's easier to talk through with families so that we're on the same page. It's easier to kind of just give that love and affection to your child, to that child.
Every year you have children with whom it's maybe a little bit harder to connect, either because of their temperament or you feel like they're pushing your buttons. And so every year you have to deal with those children. And I think that maybe in a school that doesn't have a primary caregiving model, the teachers might not invest as much time and energy in those children because they think, well, I just have to deal with that child for 1 year. Whereas as primary caregiver model, or teachers, educators, when we have a child with whom it's a little bit hard to connect, we really put a lot of effort and time in building this relationship because we're going to have those children for 4 years.
I think that the benefit of primary caregiving is there's always this underlying optimism, though, that you're going to get to see this through and you're going to get to hopefully see it get better or change or evolve, and that kind of helps you along. So even if you're dealing with like daily frustrations, you kind of get the big picture of like, this is a stage where they're at, when they're 2, they're not always going to be biting everyone, they're going to get to the point where they're going to be able to say, stop, I don't like that, because it really, if you're working with just 2-year-olds, then you're going to be in that stage all the time, but you don't really get to see what comes next. You don't get to see like, oh, every day I said, use your words. But then they don't end up starting to do that till they're 3.5, and it's like, oh, you missed that part. But now you really get the payoff of all the work that you put in when they're 2, teaching them not to bite. Then they finally are going to get to the point where that's not happening anymore, and you get to see what comes next, and you get to see the child be successful, and really that takes away any of the problems of like, oh, the daily frustrations. It's more about the big picture.
I remember a child who was with me 1 year, toward the end, he was already 4. He had been bounced around in different schools, kicked out of a couple schools, and then, he had a challenging behavior, but I really, really, really knew that the only way for me to get through him was to build a relationship with him, go the extra mile and, hold his hand and tell him I loved him and make sure that he was heard and seen, and it really made a big difference. Toward the end of the year, he was really connected to me.
So I think there's also an advantage to the primary care model when it comes to working with parents that may be also challenging, because I think that parents go through some of the same stages of development that children do, and it's kind of parallel. So they may start off at a place that they're having difficulty trusting or working with you and trusting the process. So over time, I have actually seen that shift in parents. Maybe that's not where they start in the beginning, but when they see how much you care about their child and how much you're investing of your time and the effort, and that you really are trying to get to know their child and what's best for them.
Sometimes doing this job or working with young children, we kind of forget because we have our opinions and we feel strongly about something. And of course, these parents are going to feel strongly about something. But I think meeting together and communicating and just bringing it back to the child, I think ultimately it's a team effort. It takes it takes a village. It takes a village.
So when you've worked with a family for several years, it builds a real foundation for trust and belief that you know their child really well. So it can be really helpful when you have to deliver some maybe not so great news about their child, or tackle some tough issues with their child, because you already have that established with them and they've seen you through the years and they know you're invested.